My final claim is that atheists accept Christian morality, but deny the religion's foundational stories.
Okay, I'm going to back up so it's on screen so that we can interact with it as I'm talking. Atheists accept Christian morality but deny the religion's foundation stories. Okay. First of all, no. There are many atheists who do not accept Christian morality whatsoever. Mainly because they actually know Christian morality better than the shit that's coming out of your mouth. And they know that you're full of shit. So they completely reject Christian morality based on their actual understanding of the Bible that you very apparently don't know fuck all about. That's first. Second, it's not Christian morality. Even if, they're like, well, we'll get away from that in, the first portion and get into this now. This is morality as society has deemed it over time. It started as Judaic morality, if you want to believe that this is an Abrahamic religion and that you are the successors to Judaism and that Islam is a successor to Christianity. These aren't even Christian morals. These are Jewish morals that are then expanded upon in the New Testament. They aren't changed, they are added to. The Sermon on the Mount covers that whole little bit about not changing anything. That's first, or second, rather. And third, these moralities that you're discussing predate Judaism. We see evidence of this, these type of moralities and altruisms going back to Homo erectus, before Homo sapiens had even evolved. Literally before our species existed. A different human species had morality. And based on the archaeological evidence that we have been able to find, many of them even what we would identify as pre-Christian Christian morality, if you want to use that fucking ignorant talking point. So no, your claim is fallacious in reasoning, fallacious in evidence, and absolutely not fucking supported by anything we understand of reality. And finally, deny the foundational stories. What foundational stories are you talking about, Peterson? Adam and Eve? Never happened. Noachian flood? Never happened. Tower of Babel? Never happened. Sodom and Gomorrah? Never happened. At least, we've never found any evidence for any of these things whatsoever. And before one of you in the comments starts typing, oh, but what about mitochondrial Eve and Y chromosome Adam? Those two individuals that you're discussing and that are very shittily named lived thousands of years apart. They did not exist at the same time. That's first. The Noachian flood. There has never, and I do mean never, been a global flood that submerged all land masses since the upheaval of land masses. So unless the Noachian flood was a few billion years ago, like just after the Hadean period when we're covered in water and just before life crops up, never happened. Tower of Babel. If the Tower of Babel were true, we would be able to track languages back to a core centralized location that would have extrapolated out from the supposed Tower of Babel. When all of the languages of the world were confused, you would see this kind of diffusion event of these new languages spreading out from this, and we don't see this. Nor do we see all languages tying to a original root. Doesn't happen. So, depending on what foundational stories you're talking about, because they're stories, they're folklore, they are not history. The reason that atheists deny those foundational stories is not because some of these stories don't have allegorical value. It is not because they do not have some analogy that you can use within them, or parable within them that you can use to teach a valuable lesson. They reject it because people like yourself and many others claim it as historically true, when it is not. So I don't know where you're going with this, but by the way you worded this, you're wrong on every conceivable level. Literally every. This is fractal wrongness. You could not be more wrong if you tried, and that's saying something, because this is approaching Kent Hovind levels of ignorance.
but deny the religion's foundational stories.
Hi there.
It's very nice to meet you.
What's your name?
I'm Ian.
Hi, Ian.
Yes.
Ian.
So God says that you can own people as property. He says that you can beat them with a rod too. He commands genocide in Deuteronomy, in Numbers, and in Samuel. I mean, they have a goddamn baby barbecue in Numbers. Like, is all of this in line with Christian ethics?
Okay. Strong opener. I may have worded it slightly different. I mean, I'm a prick too, so maybe not. I mean, this is a strong opener. It is a question that many Christians will dodge or appeal to the harmonization of God is the source of morality, so anything God does is in line with Christian ethics. I don't know where Peterson's going to go with it. It's a strong opener. Ian, you're doing okay so far. I hope you calm down. You seem a little high strung. Maybe it's nerves, maybe this is just how you always are, but slow down, because if you speed up too much to where he finds some minor gap in your logic, so far you haven't, but if he finds some minor gap within your logic, he will pounce on it. But in using that speed, when he interrupts you, it will likely cause some kind of a disconnect in the direction you were taking the conversation. So I hope you slow down. I hope you keep up this energy, and maybe tone down the wording slightly, because if you keep going this aggressive, you're going to get the stereotypical answers, and that's not really conducive to helping anybody like understand where Peterson is wrong and the shit that he is saying. But it might be good for some views, and I hope you're not one of the people that have been in this that have been going for views.
No.
So then God doesn't fit within Christian ethics.
Well, the biblical library is a continuing story, and everything written in it has to be contextualized by the entire text. There's 65,000 hyperlinks in the biblical text. And you can take pieces of it out.
He keeps using this talking point. I don't know if I have the mental energy to really rip it apart. No, it doesn't have 65,000 hyperlinks. It has 67 or 64,500 and change cross references, internal references to itself. That is not the same thing. You are using hyperlink because it is a catchy buzzword that is going to make those in the Dunning-Kruger level of technology think, oh, wow, they were using hyperlinks before we even had the concept of computers or hyperlinking or linking or any of these things. Oh my God, it must be so advanced. It is an appeal to grandeur almost, as opposed to any kind of evidentiary warrant. That's first. Second of all, you are basing this on a misunderstood image that you see in the past. Two different images, because I've seen you use both. One of them is a secondary referencing, like internal cross-referencing one that I described first. The other that I've seen you use on stage is a different one, where all of those lines that are drawing the rainbow arch between the points in the book are directly linking to contradictions within the Bible. So you have misunderstood a very catchy infographic that you then have misinterpreted into this view. And you have used other infographics that mimic its style to reinforce the same point, not realizing that the image you have pulled up is an image of pointing to direct contradictions page by page, chapter and verse. And the other one was internal cross-referencing contextually within the Bible. It had nothing to do with hyperlinking.
Out of context and criticize them, and that's what you're doing. But that's a mistake. I think it's an analytic mistake because you're putting the cart before the horse.
I really don't think so. I think
Yeah,
that
no, you
if we say that something is Christian ethics, then I think that all of the books essential to Christianity would fit with it, especially if it's like the main character. When we're talking
How do you deal with the morality of war?
So
how do you think you should deal with the morality of war?
Sure. Because I feel like the morality, like I feel like Christian ethics, like this is kind of, I guess I.
Oh God, Ian, you held off strong. I guess he hit one of your weak points. Maybe you're not a military tactics guy. Maybe you just never really like got into that conceptualization. The morality of war is an abstract variant spectrum. So the morality of war would depend on what is the war about? Is the war about conquering? Is the war about defense? Is the war about ideological, like genocide, like you're trying to kill off some type of thought group or religious group? Is the war a war of imperialism? Is it a war of colonialism? Is it a war of oppression and subjugation? Or is it a war of necessity? There's so many different aspects to this question that you are trying to finite down into a singular thing. And based on the look of consternation on Ian's face and the fact that he didn't immediately bite down on this and rip you apart like a fucking Rottweiler, you have, oh God, I hate this shit, Peterson. You have tried to abstract something that is a spectrum into a finited this or that question. This is intellectually dishonest of you yet again.
I think it's like kind of an absurdity to say that God doesn't fit within Christian ethics, but sure, well, we can go on my ethics. That's totally fine.
I don't know what you mean by an absurdity. What game are you playing with?
Well, I just think that it's an absurdity to say that the Christian God doesn't fit within Christian ethics, that like the Christian God isn't like Christian
I
ethical.
said that the specific statements that you made don't take the context of the stories into account, and so that your analytical approach is faulty.
Sure.
Don't put words in my mouth.
Sure, then let's go
Thank
through the example. Yeah.
He didn't put words in your mouth. In fact, he used the framework that you yourself laid out. He just didn't use it in a more reverential language that you would have found appropriate or acceptable, and therefore you decided to get irritated. We could tell by your tone of voice, the straining in your jaw, the straining in your neck. This is something that you did say and did imply. I mean, you didn't say it like verbatim, but you did imply in what you said. And this contextualization that you're talking about, you have to take them in context. In what context is it okay to burn babies? In what context is it okay to commit genocide? In what context is it okay to kill all the men, women, and boys and keep the small girls, the virgin girls, as your sex slaves? When are any of these things contextually okay? That's not something that you're going to answer, probably, and I hope Ian asks you, although I don't know if he's going to. I hope he asks you that, because the contextualization, that harmonization, that oh my God, you have to know the context, and if you don't know the context, you don't know what you're talking about, and you can't assess the morality. Foxhole that you're retreating into doesn't work. It's made of smoke and mirrors.
Yeah, so, and I apologize. So let's go through the example. So in 1 Samuel 15:3, God says, go and slaughter the Amalekites, slaughter the men, the women, the
Yeah.
children, the infants. What's the justification for that? Is that in line
That's a
with
good
Christian
question.
ethics?
That's a good question. I don't really know what to do with the terrible, blood-soaked, saturated history of the human past. I
Nope,
don't know.
that was God's
And I
past.
don't think anybody knows. I mean, what you try to do in your own life, as far as I can tell, is to conduct yourself in a manner that makes such things much more unlikely.
I
You
totally
know,
agree.
we're all saddled with the problem of the catastrophes that got us here, aren't we?
Yeah, but
And-
this one was commanded by God. That's the problem.
Yeah,
That's
well-
what differentiates it from anything else, is that this one, it's God
Do you
saying,
think that
go
there's
and
ever
do this
such a thing?
atrocity.
Do you think that there's ever such a thing as a righteous war?
I'm skeptical. I'm not sure. It would probably be situational.
Well, right, fair
Yeah,
enough.
but this one
People-
certainly wasn't a just war. The context for the Amalekite slaughter is that 400 years earlier, they fought one battle, which they lost, and God says, that's it, I'm going to wipe them off the face of the goddamn earth. And then 400 years later, he commands the Israelites to genocide their great-great-great-great-great-great-grandchildren. That's not a just war at all. And also, a genocide is not a war.
Well, a genocide can be a war, but
Absolutely not.
Look-
The genociding of the Amalekites, the men, the women, and the infants, that's not a war. The infants aren't combatants.
look, I already said that it's very difficult to look at the blood-soaked past and to know exactly what to do about it.
No, not the blood-soaked human past. One commanded by God, Peterson.
The answer I gave to the gentleman who is sitting here before you is that it's necessary to read a text like the Bible at all of its levels of analysis simultaneously. And there's a directional
No. First of all, that's not even conceptually possible. Second of all, no, you don't have to do that. You do have to take certain contextualizations into account, along with historical relevance, but not simultaneously. It depends on the intentionality of what you were analyzing and how you were analyzing it, through what lens you were analyzing it. There's a lot of things that are going into this. And the question you just dodged is, a genocide is never a just war.
morality that emerges across time, that has its roots in the Old Testament, for example, with its restrictions against murder specifically, that makes itself manifest in the Christian texts as the insistence on voluntary self-sacrifice as the foundational belief. That's a profoundly anti-violence ethos.
Do you have
Now-
the
No, it's
belief in your theology?
Well, what do you think of that? Wait a sec. Now redress
So
what I just
yeah.
said.
So I'm about to address it, but I'm
Okay.
addressing it with a question. Do you think that God is by his very essence perfect?
You'll have to provide more.
Sure, just like maximally great and all.
I
Like
think
the
it's a
great-making
definition.
qualities.
Sure.
Yeah,
By
like
definition.
flawless. Yeah. So,
Okay, so
does a
wait a
flawless
sec,
thing
wait a
change?
sec.
Does a flawless thing reveal like more and better information over time, or would a flawless thing say, "Here's what's good. Here is the absolute good thing to do at all circumstances in time"?
Well, we know some of that.
Wait,
Tell
so
the
does,
truth. That's one.
that's totally fine, but
No,
presumably,
no. You don't get to
That's-
skate over
because
that.
this is a
Which
straw
that's
man.
totally fine.
It's a straw man of my position. It's a straw man of the argument. So
In what
the
way?
argument
No,
is that
wait a
God-
sec. You
I'm
said
already waiting a second.
find one maxim that's transcendent across
I
situations.
didn't say any of those words. I'm not sure what
Okay,
conversation
rephrase.
you're part of.
Don't be a smartass.
I'm sorry.
Seriously, I mean it.
Oh no, he was a smartass and it made you uncomfortable. And you're gonna, I'm telling you, I'm serious. What, you gonna kick him off like Danny? It shows your cowardice, Peterson. He literally pointed out that he doesn't know what conversation you're talking about because he didn't say the thing that you're saying. And that this is a straw man of what he said. That isn't doing anything in a kind of smart ass way, except for the comment of, I don't know what conversation you've been a part of, but I didn't say that. That is a way to extrapolate that you are not engaging with what he is saying, or to intimate that you are not engaging with what he is saying. It is being slightly sardonic in the way that he worded it, but it's not truly being a smart ass. It's just not overly polite and deferential to you.
If we're going to have a serious conversation, conduct yourself properly.
Okay.
Okay. rephrase your question so that, because I must
Sure.
have missed it. I
So-
tried to answer it.
So in my mind, I guess by my lights, a perfect being doesn't change. A perfect being, if they're maximally good, maximally moral,
Does our understanding of the perfect being change?
our understanding might, but
Okay, how do we distinguish? How do we distinguish? Well, I agree. How do we distinguish between that, though, at the human level?
How do we distinguish between whether,
Between our transforming understanding of perfection and perfection itself?
between our
we can only, yeah, well, we can only
presumably
see
a
through our own
perfect being,
lenses.
presumably a perfect being would be revealing all of these aspects all the time, especially if God's outside of time. I don't know how a God who's outside of time
How does
is
something
revealing different things at different times. That just seems like incoherent to me.
imagine something that's perfect
Sure,
and complete?
sure,
Okay, and it's trying to communicate with creatures who are anything but that.
sure,
Well, they're going to get it wrong.
sure.
Okay,
But
now
what
wait a sec. Do you blame that on the interpreters or the phenomena itself?
so in
Like,
this
for
case-
example, are you
well, yeah,
perfect
I
in
blame
attending
this-
to your
Hold
conscience?
on. At the point in time when God is literally the one who created us, he could have created us in a way where we would always be receptive to these principles, where we don't have to go across like a learning curve
Well done,
where,
Ian.
maybe we'll understand
maintain
like,
free will.
thousands of years into the future, maybe we'll do it. Oh, also, if you believe in an all-knowing God, then free will.
Scapegoat. There's, and he's pointing it out, but no, that's not how that works. And not if you believe in the concept of free will, he couldn't have done this. Yes. So either A, not maximally powerful, constrained by laws of logic. If there's free will, I can't make them do things against their will, despite the fact that we have scripture that says precisely the opposite of what he hardens Pharaoh's heart, for example. And he's pointing this out in a different way. You're wrong. You were utterly wrong, Peterson.
Is impossible because
Wait a
if
sec. Wait, let's
well,
not go
wait,
to that
because
yet.
you threw free will into the mix.
Well, that was the answer to your question.
Yeah, and
you
I'm
said,
saying
why
that's
wouldn't God?
incoherent.
Well,
It's
a thousand
contradictory.
years of deep thinking philosophers would disagree with you,
Yeah,
but have
and
your
a
way.
1,000 years of, or at least like the last 50 years of philosophers would disagree with you. These analytic philosophers, people like Graham Oppie make arguments about the incompatibility of omniscience and free will, that if God created this world, if he chose this world instead of that world, then he makes it causally inevitable every single action that you are going to make.
You're doing
If he
good,
made a
Ian.
world where
Too
we were
bad
just
the
electrons
idiots
in
are
love,
trying to vote
then
it out
none of this
just
would have
because
happened. But by
Peterson's
making
being
us
a pain
in
in
this
the ass.
world, knowing exactly what's going to happen in the future, it makes all of those events inevitable, which means that they're all causally determined, which means that we have no free will if you believe in an all-good God or an all-knowing God that made everything.
Well, have it your way.
Okay, cool.
I don't-
So then the
I
free will
don't-
theodicy fails.
Well, it fails for you. That doesn't mean you've disproved it. I mean,
Do you
you
want to
tried to
respond the
make
argument?
yes, you tried to make a case for a causally deterministic universe. I don't think there's any evidence for that at all.
Do you think that God could have created a different universe than the one that he created?
I have no idea.
Okay, so then there's going to be a double bind, right? So either he couldn't have done it, in which case he lacks a power, or he could have done it, in which case we don't have free will, because he chose this world instead of that world, making the events of this world instead of that world inevitable with his infallible knowledge.
I don't understand where you're headed.
It just means that the free will defense fails, like all this, like
Like I said, if you want to have it fail, no problem. I don't know why it's relevant to the issue.
Do
we're
you
discussing.
acknowledge
Because
that
you
under
brought it up
your
as
free
a
will doesn't
defense to
exist?
your
No.
point.
Oh, then do you want to respond to the argument?
You'll have to phrase it more
Sure,
clearly
okay.
so that someone
So-
like me can understand it.
Yeah, gotcha. So God already knows in advance everything that's going to happen, which means that by making this world instead of that world, everything is inevitable, which means that God's act of causing this world instead of that
Inevitable
world,
doesn't mean determined.
it's causally inevitable if God chooses this world instead of that world.
Doesn't make
Causally,
it determined.
causally inevitable means
Yes, by definition, Peterson, causally inevitable and deterministic are the same fucking thing.
determined.
No, it doesn't.
Absolutely, yes, it does.
Well, have it your way.
Okay.
That's not the case.
Okay, the flags, Jubilee, you're fucking idiots. Ian, you did okay. Peterson's a snake and dodged every fucking thing that you actually cornered him on, like he does with all the rest. You didn't let him fucking get into those corners and start like scurrying around the walls, though. You did a good job. Every point you made was, for the most part, accurate. You only did a couple of small things that I would have chosen not to do personally, but that's more of a rhetorical choice as opposed to any kind of like a fundamental factual flaw in your argumentation. You did bring up more modern thinkers who point out the consternation of this conceptualization of free will within a deterministic universe and all of that. If you were going to do that, it would have been far better to bring up somebody like Hitchens, not because of his science background or philosophical background, but because of the fact that this is somebody that Peterson is going to have interacted with in a capacity as public speakers, etc., before Hitchens' death. And furthermore, because Hitchens would be the person that most people would call the counterpart to a Peterson, it would have rankled him. When you bring up a particular philosopher he knows nothing about, he can dismiss it as the abstract opinion of some philosopher that nobody's ever going to remember. Whereas if you bring up somebody like Hitchens, somebody that is remembered, is fucking a giant within the field, that took on fucking Desmond Tutu, for fuck's sake. This would have gotten the engagement that you were looking for with that point, and I think that you would have prevented these chuckle fucks around you from putting up the red flag and voting you out when you still had 11 minutes of time left. Hi, I'm Jakk, and come back to us next time on FOFANews and follow us on Substack and click the little bell down below. It helps a small channel like us out immensely. Thank you for coming.